All right, my fellow dark horses and ladies too. Our guest today is Tanya Stegman, and she comes to us with 31 years of coaching experience, but it might not all be the coaching experience that you're thinking of. You see, Tanya is the owner of Midwest Cheerlead Incorporated, and she opened her first location back in 2003, and I believe now it's grown to 5 locations
Correct.
across the U.S. And when Tanya is not working in the gym, which is a lot of the time, Tanya can be found often giving speeches at coaches conferences across the U.S. Tanya is now also doing business and consulting across the U.S. as well as abroad. Tanya's passion, in case you can't gather it, is business and marketing, as well as making a difference in every child's life. So I had to bring her on the show. Tanya, welcome to the Dark Horse Entrepreneur, and thanks for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Absolutely. I know I got to enjoy things from the customer side. You know, my daughter being one of the cheerleaders that went through your coaching programs and going to your events for a number of years. So I want to, before we even go there, I want to step back and literally let you tell your story of how you, where you came from, how you got to where you are today, and why you love doing what you do so much.
Okay. Well, I actually started at the University of Cincinnati. I was in the College Conservatory of Music. I was actually a broadcasting major, and I became a disc jockey very young at like 18 in the nightclubs in Cincinnati. So I was one of the only female club disc jockeys that were out there, and absolutely loved DJing, but also doing commercial work for some of our clients. So in doing that, you kind of get that edge of marketing because they're trying to create a commercial for a product and trying to get a reaction from the audience to either sell whatever product they're selling or to get a large crowd in for an event. So I absolutely loved marketing. I liked sitting down with the customers and finding out what their goals were and creating commercial work that would help them achieve their goals. Mm-hmm. So, but also working in the nightclubs, I started to realize at 19 or 20 that if I ever wanted to have a family or a future, probably getting off of work at 2:30 in the morning and going to staff meetings at Waffle House at 3 a.m. wasn't going to be conducive to what my goals were.
Sure.
And financially, being in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the market of being a disc jockey, you really need to be in a bigger city, you know, like a New York or an LA. And I'm very close to my parents, and I wasn't super excited about, you know, moving. So I did what I had to do. I kind of took a couple years off, and all that time I was coaching at a high school. I was coaching actually color guards and rifle lines. Okay. And then I got into coaching dance teams and ended up getting married, got into nursing because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. Like, oh, I need to get a real job. And so therefore I'm going to do nursing. Absolutely hated it. Was still coaching while I was doing nursing. And we ended up moving out into Lakota. And when I went in, I'm like, I'm going to get a job as a dance coach again, because I was leaving another school district that I had been with since 1988. And here it is 2000 coaching. I'm like, hey, we don't have dance teams here, but we have this thing called cheerleading. I'm like, it's very similar, which is not true. It's not similar at all.
Right.
But they talked me into becoming the varsity football and basketball cheerleading coach. And then they're like, we have this thing called competitive cheerleading. So I ended up taking that. I just really wanted to coach. I already knew I did not enjoy working as a nurse. It was not my passion. I didn't like it. So I took the job on, and 3 years into the job, myself and another coach who had walked in named Big Dog found that the teams were doing well and they were winning. And we were getting a lot of calls about, hey, how can I get my daughter underneath you to be coached, although she doesn't go to the same school district?
Uh-huh.
So at the time, that's kind of when all-star cheerleading, was starting to come about. It being created, I think, in 1988, although not many people had spoken about it. Ran into a friend who also coached at another school and said, look, we're going to create this business. It's going to be awesome. Got a little tiny 6,000 square foot facility and basically started Midwest Cheerlead.
Nice.
So I actually had a business partner starting out. Within the first year, she got divorced and was going to relocate. So I ended up buying her out for a small fee because the business was still growing. The very first year we had like 65 cheerleaders, which I was excited about. We're in a tiny space. We went to do tryouts and then we're at 130.
Ooh.
So we're like, look, we have to get out of this space. Ended up getting a much bigger, I think we ended up in 16,000 square feet for year 2.
Mm-hmm.
Took on this lease, a 5-year lease, which in business we all know can be very expensive. You have all those like CAM charges and things that you don't necessarily think about. But it was probably year 2 or 3, I was actually coaching. I think I had 5 coaches on staff. I was basically everything. I was the janitor, the custodian, the front office manager, a coach. I was doing every bit of the business. But as we started ending year 2 and getting into year 3, we realized we were going to be in the 200s for the number of kids.
Ooh.
So I had to make the decision of either I was going to step off the floor and run the business and help grow it so that I could put systems in place that would make it much easier, or I was going to have to decide I wanted to coach only and kind of stagnate the business. I just knew I couldn't do both. I couldn't have the business continue growing at the leaps and bounds it was growing and still coach on the floor.
Sure.
So I decided to take time off. I was like, I'm not going to coach anymore. I'm going to get a great staff in. I can still go out on the floor and see what's going on, but my passion was more because of my marketing background was taking something from nothing and seeing how big I could explode it.
Nice.
So did that. And we were in that building for 5 years. We ended up moving into a much bigger facility that we ended up owning with the roller rink.
Right.
And I guess it was probably the second year we were in that facility. We ended up in a situation where we were at a competition and my booster treasurer ended up in a fatal car crash. And it got a lot of publicity. It ended up all over the media because the kids were in cheerleading uniforms. There's 2 moms headed to a cheerleading competition with children in their car. And here a driver had decided that she wanted to take her own life and went the wrong way on the highway.
I remember that.
So we were at a cheerleading competition when we got the news in Columbus, Ohio. I had sent back, at the time was my husband, I'd sent some people back, and it became a media frenzy of news stations out front and kind of thrust us into a spotlight that we didn't necessarily want to be in,
Sure.
but kind of got pulled in. And then in our industry, in the cheerleading industry, it was one of the first major fatalities of, the mom passed away, the kids were on life support. There was uncertainty of whether the kids were going to make it or not. It kind of made the gym a standard of how to handle catastrophe or how to handle getting children and families through such a big event.
Sure.
No one had ever dealt with that. So all of a sudden we found people became very interested in how we handled it, started watching the gym a lot more. And eventually I started speaking at conferences. First of all, speaking about how we handled that, how we set the standard of how we as a gym were going to get the kids and the families through this, how we dealt with the media, and eventually started talking about business, about our marketing philosophies, our business philosophies. And that started the spectrum of a lot of speaking. So I was speaking at varsity gym owner conferences and conferences in the US. And then probably 3 years ago, I started international speaking.
Nice.
Going to conferences like in Sydney, Australia, or in Canada or London. So started doing that track of trying to teach gym owners how to grow their business, the do's and don'ts of, W-2 versus 1099.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of weird how it all evolved. I absolutely love my favorite part of it. I love the kids and I love the parents, but I really love the part of going in and marketing and the business aspect of it. So then I started business consulting, started consulting for obviously cheerleading gyms to start out with, and have kind of now ventured into like chiropractic offices that are looking at opening up multiple locations, or roller rinks, or a little bit of everything. I mean, I look at it as marketing. If you love marketing, it kind of applies to every business. There's not a business that you can't figure out.
Right.
Same thing with being a DJ and doing commercial work. You would do a commercial for a restaurant 1 minute and a car dealership the next.
Right. Right on. That is, that's quite a ride. There was, bits and pieces of there that I knew. Obviously, I was one of the parents that were there when we got that news at that event when that accident happened. And yeah, you guys were front and center for quite some time in the media and what have you. And I think it's a good point that you brought up two things here. Is like, that could have been a make or break moment for any business if they had been thrust into that kind of limelight under that scenario. And especially if you were going to become the standard that people were going to be holding others to in handling such a thing, right?
Right.
I guess what I'm going for is, were you thinking along those lines at the time? Or were you just like, look, here's what we need to do for the business and for the kids and for the industry as a whole?
I think the timing of it kind of played, get her off of there.
Yep.
Let me see. The timing of it kind of played this huge role, because here we were at a competition in Columbus, Ohio. Mm-hmm. We get news, and then it hit the news, the news media very quickly.
Right.
That, hey, we have this parent who's been in a car crash. It's a fatality. So at that time, we had to bring everybody in and tell the parents what's going on and make the decision of whether to compete, which at the time we made the decision of, hey, we don't know what's going on. There's 3 athletes involved. It's such a, people's lives have been lost. The decision today has to be, let's send you guys home. Mm-hmm. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's grieve. And then literally 6 days later, we're supposed to compete again.
Right.
And so all week long, we kept going back and forth of, do we pull from competition? At what point do we move on with our lives? What would Lori had wanted, the person that had lost their life?
Sure.
And I remember at one point speaking to my front office manager, whose name was Joyce. And I was like, look, Lori would have wanted us to compete. And these kids and families are looking to us for guidance of, when do we continue to live? We're respecting the fact, the funeral was on a Saturday. We were supposed to be competing 2 days in Cincinnati. And we're like, look, let's go to the funeral on Saturday. And then on Sunday, let's get these kids back on. Let's take them to competition. Let's have them compete. So I called the competition company and I said, hey, here's the situation. We're going to the funeral. Everyone had already known what had been happening.
Sure.
And when we got to the competition on Sunday, the event producer had already notified all of the teams coming, saying, hey, they're not going to be here on Saturday. They're going to be here on Sunday. Please keep in mind, some athletes are still on life support. They've lost a parent in the gym. This has been a huge thing for them this week. When they got there, they had cards and banners hung for our kids. Other teams, athletes came up and would hug them and say, hey, we're here for you. What do you need us to do? What's going on? And they collected money at the end of the competition. So when it was time for awards, they literally wanted to hear the story. And then they collected money for the family. Oh. And it was such it was the right decision to make, because it was therapeutic for the kids. They knew that they were moving on. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it was therapeutic for our staff, because it was like we weren't alone in this decision. Other coaches were supportive. They were there. Lots of things were going on. So looking back, people are like, how did you make that decision? And I'm like, it's not a decision you can pre-plan. It's just a thought process that you have to think through and get through and figure out what is best for you. But in that situation, even the parents said, I don't think we could have made the decision of when was the right time to move forward. Mm-hmm. So it was nice that you made that decision, but also when the kids came to competition, they felt that they had support.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. And yeah, that's a tough one. There's nowhere to go on that one. Right. All right. So we won't dwell in that realm. I want to talk about a little bit about the coaching, and not just the coaching of the kids, but obviously the business consulting that you do. And I know one of the things you shared with me is one of your big goals is to grow your business consulting and your brand. What kind of obstacles do you think you're going to be facing or have to overcome to do that?
At first, it was just getting my name out and getting outside of just the world of cheerleading, because people obviously are like, oh, you're consulting for cheerleading and stuff. Timing wise, COVID was super helpful, because what happened was COVID made the whole world stop.
Yeah.
And once the world stopped, I think everybody became vulnerable, and every business was like, regardless of what your business was, we were all in the same situation of things being out of our control. We had no control when our businesses were going to be able to open. We were all thrust into this PPP, EIDL, unemployment spotlight that we don't normally deal with every day. So when I first started consulting, I was like, you know, I was very excited. That's probably my biggest passion, is to take my consulting time and help people grow their businesses and get excited about, hey, here's your homework and here are your goals and here's what I want you to do before we talk again. Not only give them homework, but then I want to see the results. How did you grow? What was your, you know, teaching about revenue and profit? A lot of people are like, hey, my business brought in, you know, $4 million. Well, okay, of that 4 million though, how much of that was profit?
Right.
You know, it was 300, you know, 3,000,950 all overhead, and you only really made a small bit of profit. So the biggest obstacles were just getting past the stigma of owning a cheerleading gym and people understanding that I did stuff well before that. But COVID really allowed a platform of, hey, everyone's trying to help one another, and being able to help others understand the dynamics of whether to apply for the loans and what you have to do with the loans, but also the rebranding of companies. COVID was a great time to rebrand.
Really? How so?
Because we went from a, you know, touch and feel, a brick and mortar type of world to a 100% digital. I mean, I talk to people all the time, like, you know, I used to be like, people want to touch things. They want to leave with a flyer, know your demographics so that, you know, are they the type of person who wants to grab and go brick and mortar pro shop? You know, I have customers in Westchester that they want to purchase the product and walk out with the product. That's not the case anymore. You know, COVID's created a very digital world. Everything is digital marketing, getting your word out digitally. We went to virtual pro shops, because you have to keep in mind with COVID, you're either the far right or the far left, just as in politics.
Okay.
People either are very afraid and don't want to leave their homes, or on the other end, some people feel that maybe COVID is overhyped and it's not what it is. But from a business standpoint, I have to service both of those. I have to still service the person who's afraid to leave their house, but as well offer the same service to the person who wants to get out of the house and be out in the world.
No, that's it. No, yeah. Go ahead.
It's been a huge thing. And, you know, when I do my consulting, this is the first time I've told people, like, hey, let's get to all digital. Let's not do the ads in the malls, because we all know the holidays are going to be very different this year. Let's not worry about handing people paper schedules and things like that. Let's completely focus on digital marketing, because they're in their homes. Social media has skyrocketed, because people didn't have anything to do. You know, look at Netflix. We've all learned how to navigate. Between Netflix and Zoom, we have all learned how to navigate the digital world.
That's absolutely true. I know I was an infrequent user of Zoom, but since COVID has hit, I think, and I launched this podcast, I've done, well, this is interview number 20, and I've done every single one of those via Zoom, which has been great because it's allowed me to reach out. And it's actually, to your point, I think it's changed my mindset about who I can reach out to, and well as how I can get in contact with them. It's in the past, I probably would have arranged a trip to come down there and sit with your office, you know, and chat with you live, where COVID's kind of made it the norm to have this conversation digitally, which is awesome. And I know from my experience with you in the past, you were always doing some awesome marketing, especially in the malls with, you know, the stands and having your signage there. And I think I remember a couple of times even seeing stickers on the ground with your branding on it. And I was like, okay, this lady gets, she understands the mindset of the people that she's trying to engage. So you taking that one step further and say, okay, well, now they've gone digital. Has that been a boom for you of late, or is it kind of, we're still feeling our way through it?
As far as digital or
Yeah.
COVID?
But let's say both, because I think the digital has been caused by COVID, correct?
Correct. The digital marketing, actually, you have to be very open-minded and you have to find that gray area. So like, for example, we used to do after school programs where we would send our staff to schools and they would teach kids probably 30 minutes after school got out. Kids would stay after school. They would attend a tumbling class at the school or a cheer class or a conditioning class. And what happened is, as a gym owner, we made money off of that. And then we gave a kickback to the PTA, PTO.
Okay.
Now with schools going back and the uncertainty of, are they going to be virtual? If they're in person, how long will they be in person? When's that going to change? We've actually created a virtual after school program.
Nice.
So that every school can participate. So if the kids are still in school, the class doesn't start till an hour after school gets out. It allows them to get home, get on the bus. All the kids know how to get onto Zoom now. So it's very easy. Or if they're a virtual student, they can take an hour break from being on the computer and jump back on. The school still gets a kickback, but we're able to still offer our product in a safe atmosphere and we're able to offer it regardless of whether you are virtual or in person.
Nice.
So that is actually taken off. Everything we're doing right now, like I had a brick and mortar pro shop. And obviously when COVID literally came out of nowhere, I told somebody else, it was like one Sunday we're having practices and the lobbies are packed. And the next Sunday we're all in our houses.
Right.
And it came out of nowhere. So we had this pro shop full of stuff. And I'm like, look, per our governor guidelines, I can't have people in my lobby. So what am I going to do? So we tagged everything. We created like, okay, let's put all the sports bras over here. Let's put all the t-shirts over here. And on this Thursday, we're going to do a Facebook Live on the parent page and we're going to do a sale. And we tagged everything like A1, A2, A3. We sold out of everything in 30 minutes.
Dang.
So we were like, oh, this is awesome, because we just put it on their invoices, or obviously Venmo, PayPal, all of those, Cash App, every way to pay without having to walk in. We bag everything. And then a week later, it's like, okay, we're going to do a virtual sale on shorts. So get ready again. As long as you give everybody somewhat of a leeway of, give them 24 hours so they can kind of mark it on their calendars, plan on being on. But right now we do everything virtual. Our pro shop sales have probably tripled.
Nice.
Because there's we have zero overhead. We don't hang on to anything.
Right.
We order exactly what parents want. We ask that our vendors create a digital picture of what parents are ordering, whether it's, for back to school this year, we did back to school pajamas.
Okay.
Because we knew a lot of kids were going to be in bed learning from a computer at home this year versus going back to school.
That's cool.
So we just put everything online. I have a feeling COVID is going to change the business world in two ways. Brick and mortar you're going to see a lot less brick and mortar. Look at the retailers already. Yeah. People are online shopping. You don't need to pay rent. You don't need to pay insurance. And you're actually probably going to get a bigger audience right now due to online sales. And then all the businesses that have insurance companies, real estate agents, everyone's working from home. So they have to be sitting back as a company owner saying, why are we paying for this giant building, utilities, rent, insurance, when for the past 6 months, we've been able to do our jobs from home?
Sure. Absolutely. No, I don't disagree with that at all. So I really like that whole pro shop example. I think it's a lesson that so many people can take and put into play like now. So
what was really interesting was there's a female clothing company called BB. Used to have did all brick and mortar, did a little bit of online, but when you saw their brick and mortar, they always picked the high end space. It was always like, boom, you walked in, you saw BB. Beautiful shops, full windows, large spaces. Staff was incredible. All of a sudden, within 30 days, they started closing all their brick and mortar and went completely to online shopping. And I'm like, why would you do that? And they explained like, hey, rent rent space or the lease space has become very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like our customers know we're out online. They don't want to spend the time and money on space, utilities, things like that, and they can consolidate their staff.
Right.
So they literally did that, I think, 1.5 years before COVID hit.
Wow.
And I'm like, such a smart thing.
Yeah, they're a little step ahead of their time.
Exactly.
Right on. Okay, so if someone wanted to start a business, and of course you're going to speak from your side of the shop, be it a coaching or consulting business or a brick and mortar, what's the one piece of advice you want to make sure everyone out there knows?
Get an attorney. Get a law firm. And I tell people this all the time. I'm like, get a law firm. Don't just get an attorney. Attorneys are like doctors. You would not see a cardiologist for a broken leg. You would not see a dentist for a heart problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a law firm that has multiple attorneys in there, you have your head attorney that you're able. Here's my thing is, my nice thing is my head attorney is amazing. I have a cell phone number. So no matter what I need, I can call him at any time. But the firm has people who deal with employment law.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have questions about staff contracts or things like 1099 versus W-2, that person specializes in that. I have attorneys that can look at my leases before I sign them. So before I sign that lease that has a cam in there that's not locked, they could advise me like, hey, don't sign that. Don't personally sign on a lease. Have it in your LLC's name. They can also have an attorney that helps me with my personal things. The biggest mistakes that everyone makes, the question you need to ask yourself is, do you want to be a business owner or do you want a hobby? Those are two very different things. Being a business owner and wanting to enjoy a hobby are very different. If you want to be a business owner, make sure you do the homework before you decide to open. Mm-hmm. Get an attorney and talk to them. Talk to an accountant to find out what's involved in taxes, CAT tax, state tax, city tax, things like that. Always have your attorney look at leases before you sign them. Mm-hmm. I made a huge mistake my first time I signed a lease in my second building. I didn't have an attorney look at it, and I didn't realize they had not locked out the cam. So I got a $15,000 bill because there was a lot of snow that year.
Oh, man.
So it was considered extra snow removal. But
that's crazy.
Those are the big things and know that the first year, maybe the first couple years, you're not going to make money.
Sure.
The money you make is either going to be to pay off loans that you may have taken out for the business, to reinvest into the business. Mm-hmm. But I usually tell people, find something you're passionate about, find out where there's a need. What is there a need for? Mm-hmm. Like I spoke to somebody else who wanted to open a business and I'm like, but they didn't know what kind of business they wanted to open. And I'm like, well, then look around and see where's their need and how can you fulfill that need? Mm-hmm. And are you okay working 12-hour days for the next couple years and maybe not making a penny? The best story is a guy I went to high school with. In high school, he was that like nerdy, super smart kind of guy.
Sure.
Moved out to California, was working for an IT company, and I ran into his mother. And she's like, oh my God, he quit his job. He's moving back home here to Ohio. He wants to live with us. He lost his insurance. I can't believe what he's doing. He's going to live at home with us because he's not going to be able to afford. He's going to try to start this new company. And I was like, oh, wow, that's like making 6 figures in IT. You just don't quit your job and go move back home with mom and dad.
Right.
So I thought it was very interesting. Saw her probably 2 years later. And I said, hey, still living at home? She said, yeah, he is still living at home, but there's a big announcement that's going to be made. I'm sure you will hear about it. 6 months later, he created eBay.
Oh, no.
But that was my thing is he was willing to walk away from a corporate job.
Yeah.
Willing to walk away from something that was very stable to take a risk. Mm-hmm. And that's what business is. It's a risk. You get what you put into it, but It's 100% risk.
No, that's a great point. I was just hearing the story of is it Melanie Perkins, the lady that created Canva,
Yes.
And I think so many people have, that don't know the whole story. They know how quickly Canva hit the digital landscape, and it's taken off like a rocket. And I think most recently it was given a $3 billion valuation. It's like, wow, here she is, CEO of a $3 billion valuated company I think she's in her early 30s. What they don't know is she started off this thing at the age of 19,
Oh,
and
wow.
was in had a similar piece of software that her and some partners developed. She hired some folks in to develop software, but she was doing it for yearbooks for schools. And
Oh,
she was doing that for a number of years, and she thought this could be so much bigger. And when she stepped out to do that yearbook for schools thing, she borrowed the money from her mom. She already lived with her mom, and the mom let her bring a printing press into the living room. And so when they let the high schools use the software for free. The deal was, when it was time to print the yearbooks, they had to come to her to place the orders. And so she went out and bought a printing press and was in there, ka-chunka, 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 doing that. But so she got to cut her teeth on business and, all the nuances of that software for years, so that when she went out there to Silicon Valley to pitch her idea, and she pitched it hundreds of times. It took her a while to bring in the investors, but she'd already built the things up. She had all that knowledge, and then of course, it took a while to build up from there. So those are great tips. All right, so let's leverage your marketing mind for a moment, and let's talk about a great marketing tip for those listening.
I think a great marketing tip is knowing your audience. Knowing, I have 5 gyms,
Mm-hmm.
but the demographics in every one of those gyms is very different. So knowing who you're marketing to,
Mm-hmm.
knowing your avatar, and
Yes,
understanding what an avatar is, so that you're not wasting your money. Um,
absolutely.
like
Great.
for me, I know that Facebook marketing is geared towards adults.
Mm-hmm.
The kids really aren't on Facebook. For me, I know my adults are the ones who are going to be spending the money,
Sure.
but the decision makers are the kids.
Really?
Yeah, the kids very much. It's funny with COVID, and also it happened in 2008 when the housing market crashed.
Mm-hmm.
CNN actually did a report and said the businesses that survived were children-oriented businesses, because a parent will give up for themselves in order for their child not to feel the negative effect.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
We,
yeah, you're
we're
right.
busier now than we were pre-COVID.
Really?
And it's because parents want their kid to feel some sort of normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that kids are, on Snapchat. Unfortunately, they're on TikTok. We're doing that. But what you want to do is get the kids to love what you have, whether it's through video or photo. Kids are very image oriented.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see it. You want them to love it enough that they go to their parent and say, I really want this product. I
Right.
really want you to buy this for me. Then it's the parent that takes the extra step to investigate it. So
Yep.
if I do Facebook marketing, I know with dads or with men, I'm marketing value.
Right.
Dads want to know what I'm spending, what am I walking away with?
Mm-hmm.
And it's regardless, whether it's coaching or whether it's a car or a shirt, they want to know, if I'm spending the money, what is the value I'm getting out of it?
Absolutely.
Females are emotionally driven. They want to know the memories, or how it'll impact their child, the friendships, or how it'll make their child feel. So the marketing is very different depending if you're marketing to men or women. And then you also have the child. So I think that that's the biggest marketing tip, is knowing who your perfect avatar is, who is your perfect customer,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the types of marketing you have and making sure you're using it appropriately so that you're hitting the demographic you need. And you're not. So for me to get on Facebook and market images and videos that are geared toward kids, it's a waste. The kids aren't on Facebook. They're not going to be where the adults are. That's not cool.
Right. Yeah,
They
totally.
tried, yeah, they had Facebook there for a while. And then once the adults started getting into there, they kind of, picked up their own little social media. And
Mm-hmm.
with TikTok, with them talking about banning TikTok, we're just waiting for the next TikTok to come out.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that's what the kids will gravitate towards.
Yep. The kids are always going to the cool spot. No, you're right. When the parents get there, they're like, okay, I'm done. I'm out.
Exactly. I'm out. Got to find something else that you're not there.
That's right. That's right. Right on. Now, you mentioned that you had an offer you wanted to share with the audience.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of business consulting, and I normally do like a 30-minute, what I do is a 30-minute business consulting. It's normally $50 for the half hour, but if they mention your program, we'll do
Okay.
it for $25
Nice.
for that half hour. And what we do is when they book with us, we send them a link to book. They get a questionnaire because we want to make sure that 30 minutes is really focused on their goals,
Sure.
that I already know what, where were you pre-COVID? Where are you today?
Mm-hmm.
What are your business, your biggest obstacles as far as a business? What are your strengths? So that when we get into the 30 minutes, it's about setting goals. And then we also give homework. So at the end of the consulting call, you have work to do. You should have an entire list of things that kind of get your brain going. Like, oh my God, I never thought about this. And how can we get your business to the next level?
Sweet, sweet. I'll definitely get that link from you so I can put it in the show notes so that
Perfect.
folks can get there to that. Any final thoughts you want to leave with anybody listening from your experience, or just, hey, it's COVID. Here's a tip for you.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is, hey, it's COVID. At this point, 2020 has been a wild ride. And it wasn't just COVID that's been wild. It's like one thing after another. I think the biggest thing is if you stay focused, you stay positive, and you stay open-minded. Look for the things that people haven't really thought about that are right in front of our face. Right. There's so many things that are just right there. And if you stay positive and you know what your goals are, you will get to the end of this.
Absolutely.
May look a little different, but you'll definitely get to the end.
Absolutely. There you go. Dropping gems. I want to say sparkles, but it doesn't seem right? Anyway.
Glitter and rainbow.
Glitter and rainbow. There we go. All right, Tanya, thank you so much for your time today. I definitely appreciate it.
No problem.